I want everybody to be a self-learner. I don't believe in teaching. I believe in learning. I've made up my mind that I wanted to be a photographer. So I saved my money, whatever little it was, and it was $15 to tell you the truth. And I sent it to the correspondence school in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And they sent me a 4x5 camera and a box of glass plates. And I started on my own. That was 1901. My first nude photography was a self-portrait in the woods, 1906, on the University of Washington campus. I set it up and jumped into it, and that was it. I don't know who tells me this, but somebody said that I'm the first woman that ever photographed a nude man. I was made fun of at that time when I photographed in 1915 my husband nude on Mount Rainier. In that one that I personally called the Fawn, he actually was sitting on a cake of ice on that little lake. He chose the spot, and it was very nice. Of course, they were not acknowledged as being nice, ladylike job. I was condemned by the newspaper, a well-known publishing company in Seattle, and they called me an immoral woman. And now people seem to pay for them and buy them and like to look at them. I never photograph ugliness. I'm afraid I'm a little too aesthetic to be anything but old-fashioned. I agree to that. I let myself be old-fashioned. Why shouldn't I? Well, this is 1910. It's when I was under the influence of William Morris, reading his stories and calling the titles. That's called Eve Repentant, I think. No, the other one is. Yeah, this one, I don't know what I called it. You know, these prints were these things were all done in platinum. And I have a few yet. That's called Wind. It really is a girl that shared my studio. These other ones, the dreamy ones, that's like her, and I think that's very good. She's pretending to see fairies. It's what she was like. The way that I happened to meet Roy was that I was on the committee of the Fine Arts Society, the exhibition committee. He wanted to exhibit in Seattle, and I arranged to exhibit. And we sold enough of his prints without any effort to give him in the whole year in Paris. And it was really astonishing. He'd write me on pieces of paper as big as a newspaper, fine handwriting, and tell me all about his life. And I was just the woman for him from handwriting, from just sheer knowing me by letter. I was the woman. And so we had a funny little wedding in John Butler's studio, which was next door to mine. This is Pat, and that's Ron. Can you tell the difference? Didn't I spend an enormous amount of time at doing this kind of stuff? Well, I mean, I had 3 children in 2 years, and what could I do? Well, I didn't have any choice. I couldn't get out of the garden, out of the yard. I was always there. But it got me back into working. I had one child who brought snakes home to me and also managed to take care of them so they wouldn't get away from me. He always held on to the tail. This is 1925, called Magnolia Bud. And of course, the magnolia flower, the most common plant, the most common job I ever did, is still on exhibition at the Museum of Modern Art. And if ever they sell a print, that's what they sell. I suppose I shouldn't take it hard. I'm taking one to Pasadena right now. Those what I call conservative buyers. I did make an awful lot of prints to have a choice. I'm never sure myself. It's a precious idea with etchers to keep a limited number, but I don't do that with photography because if the negative's still good, why, the print is just as good as the earlier one. Oh, well, I've been horticultural minded since the big freeze in '32. That's when I became one of the members of that society that's now the California Horticulture. They called themselves plant materialists then, and we had dinner together in an Italian restaurant. It was really funny. We're so different now. I'm not going to go back over my past now anymore on the plant things. I'm just going to quit them. I must do something else. I think everything you do is something of a contribution, unless it's no good, and then you better hide it. What I like to see about a photograph is everything smoothly in focus, or if it's out of focus for a purpose, and the quality and gradations of value is rendered more nearly and accurately in a smaller photograph. I don't mean tiny, but I mean not too big. I think still photography has more of an aesthetic appeal, that is, the single photograph ought to have, depending upon the subject, of course, that makes people want to have it around. Of course, there are fewer people want to have it around than want to have paintings, but that will come. And I have a formula for how to make a good photograph. I think that in order to make a good photograph, you have to be enthusiastic. That is, you have to think about it like a poet would. And there are many choices of that. The ones that I've printed lately of Edward were this series, when Margaret Mather was with him. They were all done at the same time with a studio camera that was 11 by 14 with an 8 by 10 back. You can't imagine anything more difficult. She was a beautiful woman and a very good photographer who didn't really have a chance. She wasn't enough woman's lib, I guess. She told him goodbye, and he went to Mexico with Tina Madati. I went to see her when she was, I would say, in her 40s. She ended up in an Oriental shop in Glendale, tending it for a man. Well, she kept getting fatter and fatter and fatter, and she died. I don't know how. Martha Graham was in 31. And of course, I didn't know then in the 30s what I do now about photographing this person in sunlight. I'm surprised that I did as well as I did, because I wouldn't do as well as that now in sunlight, because I don't choose sunlight. I get out of it. I can't remember what these films were, but if you can imagine 8 by 10, it would be a terrible drag for me now. I couldn't do it. Even 5 to 7 would be annoying. I'm trying to print all the stuff that I think I've neglected in my past. And I'm sure I'll find something, because, you know, your point of view changes. At first, you take out the most outstanding thing that you think you've ever done, and you print that, and you don't make any, just let the others go. You know, it was funny, the editor of that department in Vanity Fair at that time saw something that I did of Martha Graham, and he wrote to me and asked me if I would be willing to go to Hollywood. And then he said, also, please state your preferences. And I said, ugly men, because they never complain, you know. So that's what I got. I got ugly men. And the few women that I photographed, I don't believe any of them were ever used. Oh yes, one was. You know, Vanity Fair seemed to think that Hollywood was right next door to Oakland. And they would give me a quick telegram that I was to be there and I had an appointment. Of all the people that I did in Hollywood, I think Spencer Tracy was one of the nicest, and I got a very nice portrait of him. It never went anywhere. I don't know why. And it was old bleach boards. It was on a set, you know, a set where there was bright sort of day. And then I did him on that set in sunlight, and I didn't succeed so well. Wallace Beery had an appointment with me, and he came sailing right in beside me in a Blanca and set it down, jumped out of the plane, put his hand on the plane, began talking to me. He was such a blunt, honest kind of a person. I would like to have known him. Not trying to make friends and influence people, and I like that. And Cary Grant, I remember, I didn't like his house. I put a light on the back of a chair, you know, using the chair as a tripod, you might say. And he said, if you'd like that, take it with you. I have no use for it. It was so hideous. He didn't like his furniture. He was renting. And so I got so annoyed by the inside that I took him out in the garden against a wall of bricks whitewashed. This is the Cary Grant against the wall. And it's the best one I did of him, but still, it's just spotty sunshine. More people spoke to me about my family recollection things. Why is that? I like the one with Mother with the milk bucket, don't you? She wouldn't have liked it, of course. She never said anything about anything we did of her. So this was 1923, this one of Mother, Father, and the cow. Bossy. Well, he was always a humanist, there's no question about that. And his whole action of his life was much motivated by the theosophical beliefs. You know, he never drove it into anybody or tried to tell other people what they ought to think or anything like that. But, you know, he just thought the Christian religion hadn't done anything for the world. And he always made taffy on Sundays, so we pulled it, so we had to stay around. So we'd stay home and not go to the church. I never went to Sunday school very much. Well, his influence on me was contrary to my interests, but he never opposed me. That is, he always said, why do you go to school so long and just turn out to be a dirty photographer? But at the same time, he made a very good darkroom for me in the woodshed. Of course, in that day, one didn't have any light.